Yeah. Hi,
Yeah.
Kimmy.
Hi, beautiful
Hi,
Kimmy.
Hey, Kim.
I'm
So,
naked. Well, actually, I have a bra on.
a what?
Oh.
A bra.
I'm proud. She still does it.
Brar.
Hello, and welcome to Table for Five with No Reservations. Take a seat at the table for a fresh, sweet, salty, tart, and pleasantly bitter conversation.
Hello, and thank you for taking a seat at the table. This is our Autism Behind Closed Doors series, and this is our No Reservations episode for that. So today we'll talk a little bit about how we feel about this series and opening up about this stuff because they're kind of tough conversations to have, and then hopefully maybe get into a more lighthearted conversation, but we'll see because sometimes we just go up. With me at the table tonight, I have Tabitha,
Hello.
Kim,
Hi.
Rachel,
Hey, everybody.
Jen.
Everyone.
I am Jamie. I thought we would start off by talking about the series and how it felt for everyone. I thought it was really good. We hit some good topics and hopefully didn't scare anybody, but talked about the realness of things. We were just chatting on the phone, some of us the other night. I was talking about how, even though we're not that far away from some of the things, especially in the elopement episode, I think there's one point Tabitha was talking about like just that fear of everywhere you go, your kid taking off or like getting into things or hopping in other people's beds. And I already almost forgot about how hard that stage was. And it was like almost a little triggering for me, like remembering all that. So this whole series, I think, did a little bit of that, but I think it was also nice to talk about it after some time has passed, that even though we're going through some of these things still, for me personally, that it hasn't been as bad, or maybe it is, and I have a better control or understanding of the situations. And so I just really could see growth in my child, my family, and myself with dealing with all this. And then also like some of it just straight up is really hard and sucks. Rach, how did you feel about the series?
You know, I'm proud of us. I feel like this one is sort of like our mental health series. I'm really proud when we get to talk about such heavy hitting topics. And I feel like, self-harm and aggression are so wildly different. And I am grateful having recorded and released those episodes that like we were able to convey the differences and talk about, the experience parenting during each one. Like you, James, I don't know if I've gotten better at it, like managing these aspects of our life. I certainly don't think our frequency or intensity has gone down in this part of town, but I feel more equipped. And I feel like, one of the takeaways that you'll hear again and again through the series is that it's all temporary. And it's fine to say that, like, and it's real, it's temporary, but what if she gets hit by a car when she's eloping? What if my back actually gets broken in aggression? Like there's things that like yes, it's a short period of time, but there are these real and lasting impact or parts. I feel like James, as you were saying, like just being triggered by discussing how hard that was or how you just like get back into that feeling of being in the pond when Nora goes into the ditch. I mean, it's just terrifying. And I don't know. I don't know that we're really out of that feeling in many ways, but I sure am proud that we get to say all the things that we have about like lifting the veil because we've seen during the release of these episodes that there are so many people that are saying these episodes resonated. And we're not alone. So I'm proud of us and I'm hopeful that our tips and tricks and sort of validating people helped.
Yeah, we have a friend who was just talking about how her son just started a new hard stim, and it's one that's harder to deal with. Some stims are easier and some stims are harder to deal with. But just, I mean, it just reminded me of our conversations, how her dealing with this, she's like, immediately I start fearing for like how far it can go because we've been there, and I start fearing for like, is this never going to stop because things go on and on. And even when you're in that moment and you can think in your mind like, okay, we get through things eventually, it might take time, but it's hard in that moment to have that perspective. And I think talking about this stuff sometimes reminds you of like having the previous experience. As soon as something starts happening, you just rush back to that. You're like, oh, my kid wants to run off in the street again. We just went through a little phase with Jesse trying to escape the house, like purposely trying to like get out of the house. And it's like, oh, we have to go back on lockdown. It's just like, oh, immediately. Tabs, how did you feel about this series?
Yeah, I thought it was hard. I mean, I find this stuff hard to talk about with people who are close to me, with processing of myself. am like such a like closed-lipped person sometimes about certain things that are really challenging. I think it's hard to open up about certain things. I'm trying to get better at it, but it sometimes you don't want to talk about it. You just can't, you know, verbalize the experience, and you don't want to go there again with all the emotions if you've already like tried to come away from that. So I think it was hard, for sure. I was talking to my therapist recently about like one of the hardest things about I think about aggression and self-harm, eloping, some of these more dangerous factors in our lives are that you can get to a place where you don't see an end or you don't see it changing, and you're in this hyper vigilant state, and it does so much stuff to your body and your brain that it's hard to like talk about that stuff, but also just to live in it, to like manage your day and be on this status of like fear all the time and safety and that
I
kind of
can't
thing.
even recognize how much it's affecting every part of my life when you're in
Hmm.
it.
Hmm. And there's always, I think, an aspect that is driven around safety, no matter the age of your kid. It's changing, it's fluid, it goes from one thing to another thing as they get older, choking and water and streets and all that stuff is it's pretty impressive to like think about how many years you spend monitoring that those kind of things. And also I think what was a little bit hard to talk about is like the effect on our kids and how challenging this life is for them. I was thinking about that so much. It's like not only are we thinking about their safety and protection and all these things, but just like being in the world for them is so hard sometimes. And I will never understand how actually physically draining or hard that is for my kiddos in certain places. And then me trying to monitor it too is probably like, get away from me, lady. Like, let me do my thing, you know? Like, yeah,
I'm trying to save
that,
my life, lady.
yeah,
Back off.
yeah. It creates like a complicated dynamic because you're their safety person, and also you're like the lightning rod for their feelings and emotions and all that stuff because they feel safe to be that way. So it's pretty incredible. I watched a video which I posted on my page of Mary Catherine Backstrom. Is that right?
Hmm.
Yeah, where she was talking to her therapist, and her therapist was asking her how she was doing, and she was feeling like a failure, was feeling like, you know, she wasn't doing anything right and struggling. And her therapist was like, your feelings are not how you're doing. And I never
Hmm.
heard it explained that way before. Like, you're doing a great job, even if you're feeling like garbage, you know, or if you're feeling like terrible or like you're not succeeding. Your feelings are separate from actually what you're doing. And I think we get that a lot from other people, that we're so strong and that we're doing great. And we can't take in those comments because it doesn't feel that way. But our feelings are separate from actually how we're managing our lives, which I found like so much comfort in that. I'm like, yeah, I feel like dog shit.
You're damn right. I'm doing well and
But
feeling like
maybe
trash.
I'm doing great for these circumstances that I'm trying to live in right
You're doing a
now.
great job,
So
Tabitha.
thumbs up to that.
That video
But
made me cry. It was
me
like,
It
that
did
too.
was
Yeah.
too.
great.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
her.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, and your kids are typical. Like, I
Well,
was like,
well,
oh,
and if you're feeling like you're doing horrible, go watch that video, because you may be feeling that way, but you might be killing it in other people's eyes. You know, like there's only so much rubber band or capacity. I think of my own personal capacity and like a rubber band that's overstretched. And there's only so far it can go before it breaks, right?
Yeah.
And just learning how far to the brink you can go is pretty incredible for the human experience, you know? So anyway.
So on my page, when I write a lot, I won't say it's negative, but it's usually when I'm feeling something. And
Deeply.
that's usually
Yeah.
not rainbows and balloons. Like I'm feeling kind of down. And so a comment I get pretty often, which sometimes I don't like because I feel like I'm like, oh, shut up. Let me just be sad. But especially about my parenting. I write about my parenting and my insecurities as a mom a lot. And a lot of people will write, the fact you care so much and you're trying so hard and feel like you're failing, that means you're being a great mom because you're trying. It is a really beautiful sentiment to think about. And that reminded me of that. It's like this parenting journey and being a mom and going through all this for both my kids is so hard because I am trying so hard.
Mhm.
I care so much. And I do, like you, Tabitha, I take on my kids' feelings and I'm mostly concerned for them and their futures having to deal with the cards they've been dealt. And I really take that on in my soul. Like I feel that every day. And I'm like, okay, this is bringing me down, feeling all this. But at the same time, it's because I care so much. So that
Yeah.
made me think
And I think too, like, I think I've said this before, like, one of the reasons I don't talk about these things is people get put off by my frank nature about the way that I talk about my feelings. Like, I am highly connected to how I'm feeling inwardly. So, like, if I'm feeling like garbage, it's intense, you know, or if I'm feeling joy or happiness, it's intense because that's the way I experience life. And that's the way I talk about my experiences. I'm like, this feels like dog shit. And then people are like, whoa, lady, you need to calm
Well,
down.
Kimmy said that the other day. We were talking about doing this series, and she's like, I feel like I'm being dramatic. And I think I'm the same way. I'm like very open with how, especially in my writing. I'm more open in my writing than I am talking to people most of the time.
Yeah.
And I think people think we're like being dramatic or being over the top. And it's like, no, this is how I feel at my core. And I'm just expressing that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't express that so bluntly. So it comes off as like, oh, it's not that bad. You know,
And people want to give me solutions too. And I'm like, I'm just walking through the feelings over here.
Yep.
Like it's okay to like feel your things that you need to feel because the opposite side of that is also good. You can, the way you view happiness and joy comes from the ultimate other side of that where you can understand feeling pain and sorrow and experiences.
Yeah.
So like it's a reflection of each, but it's off-putting to people, I think
Well,
sometimes.
people don't want to think about their feelings, and they don't want to think about other people's feelings sometimes. I'm not saying everyone, but it is hard. Even when we're in our crap, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to go read the saddest thing when I'm sad about myself. What about you, Kimmy?
I think for me, it's just crazy to look back and think of like when we were coming up in this, there was, no social media, no like
Community.
podcast, stuff like that, so you really just kind of were truly, truly isolated in it because we don't know people like in real life that are like Alyssa. Yes, people that have autism, but not quite like her. And there was just so much, I think, shame and guilt and fear wrapped around all these things. And I think it's just great that people can at least have avenues to find people that will talk about it, whether you're talking back to them or just listening, through podcasts, through Facebook pages you follow and stuff like that. Because it really, I think one of the hardest things about, I mean, it's just hard living like that, but the isolation that you feel and the separation that you feel from other people, other families, and if your kid gets say too aggressive or their elopement is just too much, then you're not able to do the typical things. You're not able to do things with family members during those times. And for us, those times have always come and gone. So it's like now I know, even if it happens, like I know that we'll come out of it in the end. Like I know that it's not gonna last forever. Like nothing that we've experienced ever does. But I know that of going through this for 25 years now, I at least have that. And I don't think I get as affected as long. I bounce back a lot quicker. So that is good. And I mean, I think one of the hardest things, obviously the aggression and the self-injury is so hard, but it's the no fear aspect, which thankfully like we don't have that anymore. I couldn't 100% count on Alyssa not to do certain things. Like we still have to put things in place for supervision and be a little extra careful. She's not going to leave the house. She's not gonna, when we're crossing the street, I still hold her hand to make sure. But like I see her, she looks, she listens, but when she was younger, no fear with anything, no fear with danger, no fear with safety, no fear with personal safety. She doesn't necessarily have 100% awareness of those things, but she has the part that she's like a little cautious of certain things. And it really just makes a difference. That's really just so hard when your kids have no fear. And they're fast and they're little, especially when they're young. I feel like it's just young kids are just difficult anyways. Like we've talked,
that darting is really something.
But I mean, I have kids at the daycare that do that are perfectly typical.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? But then you
Yep.
take that and then you take like no fear and special needs and you blend them all together into one thing. And it's like, it's a miracle we make it
Name
through
it
those
Sealy.
first 5 years with these kids
Oh.
with ourselves intact. And it's really like, I always said it's like having a toddler for like, you know, most people only have a toddler for a year, 2 years, you know. With some of our kids, it's like you're having a toddler for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you know, some people even longer. And it's just exhausting, you know, you just to keep
Yeah.
up with it. And then if you have a kid who doesn't sleep on top of it, I mean, there's just so much. It's so hard in this life. But you also have to try to keep a different perspective and not focus on all the negative stuff all the time. But, you know, it's just a lot. And I don't think people realize it because we don't talk. Who wants to be at a party and be like, oh, my life's so hard. My kid does this, my kid does that. It's like, of course,
Would you like to see my bruises under my
no,
long
it's like, of
sleeves?
course you kind of want to get away from it sometimes too, you know? It's like
Mhm.
you want to be
Yeah.
somewhere, not just because you feel like people don't understand, because it's just if you're getting away from it and you're getting a night out, like,
You
you know,
need
sometimes
to.
you don't necessarily want
Yeah.
to
You need to get
talk
away from
about
it sometimes.
all
Yeah.
those hard things that are going on in your life. And like you said, Tabitha, people meanwhile, they want to give you solutions. They want to give you these ideas that you haven't thought of apparently on your own yet.
Have
And
you put a lock on your door before for
yeah,
security?
and it's like,
Oh,
and it is awkward. Like, what do you say when somebody says something that seems so outrageous to your life that you almost can't even believe it? Like, of course, you know, like I don't.
Or so obvious. Like, of
just
course I'm
fly
trying.
right in front of my
I
car,
know, and
please.
I'm just like, or they say something like equally outrageous that you're like, what?
Did you
Yeah,
ever
it's
try to
just,
tattoo your phone number on her arm so that if she gets lost? No.
or like, oh, you just gotta tell them no, or something like that. And I'm just like, okay, yeah. So I think, you know, I think the talking about it, I think it's good. You know, I think it helps with the stigma of it, you know, and it does, especially aggression, you know, it really does. There's a fear that's deep rooted in that. There's a fear that our kids can be taken away from us. There's a fear that, you know, our other kids can be taken away from us. It's just, it's so much. There's a fear of judgment, you know, and even these professionals, they don't know what it's like. It's their
Mhm.
job. It's not their life. It's not the same. So
Oh, they've read about it in a textbook. They haven't actually
Mhm.
lived it.
yeah,
So
or they've heard it, families tell them about stuff, but like it's not the same as really understanding what it's like to live it. But I think it's good. I think it's good for people to be able to hear about it and be able to talk about it because, you know, like we are said, it just is one of the most isolating things, I think.
And I feel like it's like when you talk about, because like Tabs has the youngest kids. And so she's still in a lot of this. I mean, we're all still in it in different ways, but like she's like either right in or maybe coming out a little bit of that like raw, no fear stage, the taking off, the looking at every corner kind of thing. And like right now we've been in an okay place. So like if we would have talked about this over the summer where things were a little harder for this, it probably would have been way harder for me to talk about it, or you know, I probably would have cried, been way more emotional about it. We go through these waves of it too, and
Mhm.
it's just so hard because sometimes it's like living at that level like that Tabs was talking about where you're just always like high strung, worried about like what's going on, you're going, and then but when you do have that little break where like things are good for a little bit, for me I'm always waiting for that other shoe to drop. Like I'm just like, it's gonna happen. But then it's like almost when it does, when you do get back in that, you like are like, oh, why did we even have to have that good time? Because now I'm just like, now I know what it could be like. And even in the good times, it's still not as simple as you imagined it would be. Not that you imagined parenting being simple, but you didn't imagine it being this hard.
Well, and it's like I said during the aggression podcast, I was like, you know, when you say it's good, that doesn't mean nothing's happening. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just not like the main focus of what's going on at the time. In It's like you said, you get used to it. You get used to certain things, not all the things, but you get used to certain things. And I think another thing that people don't realize, like thinking about Tabitha's daughter, it's like, okay, some of the things are typical for children of those ages, but then it's like, then they get a little bigger. They're a little smarter. They're a little more conniving. They're a little faster. They're a little stronger. So now you have, you know, someone who's being as impulsive as maybe a 2-year-old, but they're in a 5-year-old's body. So it's like
Mhm.
those things, I don't think that people can really understand how difficult it can be because most
Yeah.
of the time you can keep up with a 2-year-old, you just scoop them up, you know. When you can't scoop them up anymore, or they're climbing on the things, or they're, you know, they're really just
Pulling your hair
outs
once you get them in your
out
arms.
or outsmarting you. You know what I mean? It's like you can usually outsmart a 2-year-old for the most part, but like,
I
you
don't
know,
know.
as they get older, it gets,
Well, and as they get older, the judgment goes up from the
Yes.
outside world as well.
Mhm.
Like,
and yeah, and
yeah.
that's another thing too. That
People don't
makes it a lot more stressful. You know, a 2-year-old pinches another 2-year-old. I mean, it's not awesome, but it's like everybody understands.
Yeah.
You got a 6-year-old pinching somebody, then it's not as typical, so
Horrible.
people aren't as understanding about it.
Yeah. What about you, Jen?
Pretty much everything everyone said. I've learned that it ebbs and flows, but when we were talking about it, it actually reminded me about how dark of a place I fell into in the really hard height of her aggression time. I thought, oh, but it's like everyone else said, now knowing that you come out of that place, but there's a very good chance you'll return into that place. For me, I think that I handle it differently now. And I've talked about it before. I feel like I stand a little taller, where before I think and just be clear, she still kicked my ass. But I'm just saying, I don't think I have that sort of level of fear in it that I had before, if that makes any sense. So for me, it's kind of that part of it's changed. But the other thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is even when things are going well, because like I said, it ebbs and flows, we sit in a constant state of waiting, which I think Jamie might have said. So I think we have better reflexes than the average person, because even if she will make a sharp move and it's not anything other than she's just moving or doing something, my reflexes are still like, I'm fast, like I'm pretty quick. And you don't even think about it. It's just such a natural thing to do. And so just thinking back about all that stuff. And then I just also thought about, for us personally, how far we've come in sort of that stage of art. And again, it's not talked about nearly as much as and I've always said, I feel like trying to explain it to someone who actually doesn't live it, it sounds very dramatic. It sounds very blown out of proportion. It sounds almost made up. Because again, people can't imagine a little kid being able to sort of inflict that amount of aggression, pain, strength,
And even
strength,
They're so strong.
so
and
strong.
even
Oh
the
my
no fear,
gosh.
So strong.
the no fear part of it. So many times people have been like, "Oh, they'll stop." You know what I mean? They'll stop if they do this. They'll stop if this happens, and it's like,
No, they don't sleep when they're tired, and they don't eat when they're hungry either.
So but you feel it in your body. You hold it in your body. And I started going to a chiropractor, which was new for me, which is great, by the way. I highly recommend it. But he's like, your whole body from the hair pulling actually was so out of line. My pelvis was out of line. Like everything was out of line in my body. And
because you're not getting your hair pulled like you're in some club in Miami. You're getting your hair pulled and some like freight train is attached to it, dragging your ass to the floor. It's not the same. It's like a car wreck.
So he said that on your body is like constant whiplash. Like he literally said you're in a constant state of whiplash.
I've never had my wig snatched in Miami, by the way. Like I've never had my wig pulled.
I'm like, what's
I
going
love the
on in
hair pulling
Miami?
I
Like
enjoy.
this is kind of
Oh,
interesting.
sorry,
Girls
listeners.
trip.
Girls.
I was, watching some TikTok that hopped up about sleep because, it just loves to hate me.
Hashtag
TikTok.
sleep.
But it's like, if you're not getting like 5 hours of sleep at least a night, but you should be averaging 9 hours, you're way more likely to have cancer. You're more likely to have these health issues. And I'm like, well, I'm just screwed. Like there's like just know that
First
there's
of all,
sun coming out. I'm screwed.
When someone and no offense, I love Jen Aniston, if you're listening, we love you. I'm just saying,
Hey,
you
Jen.
have all people recommending to make sure that we get 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night. I'm like, girl, I'm lucky if I get scraped by 4. Are you kidding? Your recommendations? Who gets 9 hours of sleep? Who actually
Remember when I hacked into my Fitbit and learned how to change my goals so that I could earn some stars for 4 hours? I'm like, I did it.
Well, and I think it's like that pie of like all the things like what we talked about in this series is a part of the pie that makes our life more challenging. It's aggression, elopement, self-harm, no sleep, not eating, safety awareness,
PTSD pie. That's what
your
it is. It must be that.
body being jacked, like sometimes you wake up and you literally feel like a truck ran you over getting out of bed in the morning.
Or like
and
you were in Miami getting your wig snatched.
that sounds so nice. I don't know what that means exactly, but I'm too old for that. But
Well, Melissa was
there's
younger.
a girl at Ja Rule.
Her mornings
Yes.
would be so hard. So it'd be like I'd only be up for 15 minutes before the screaming would
Oh,
start.
yep.
And it
Oh
would go
my
on for
God,
an
or
hour.
not
So
even.
it's just such a hard
Mhm.
way to like start your day sometimes, you know. It's just there's so many aspects of this that are just, you know, and thankfully now it happens time to time, but that's like the exception. Where before it was a miracle if that like just didn't happen for some odd reason. It was just be like, I don't think it ever really didn't happen. I mean,
I remember trying to explain that to a friend when my son was younger, of like, when you have a newborn, like you're just sleeping basically when they sleep. I know that doesn't always happen, but like your sleep's like really broken up because they're up all the time. But you're trying to sleep when they're asleep. It's not like, I mean, we've never been this family, but the family who gets their kids down to bed at a like really early bedtime, and then you have that free time to be with your spouse or to watch a show. That's just, my son has just had such a hard time with sleep. That's never been our journey. And so like
Mhm.
when he's asleep, I'm either like cleaning up, getting ready for bed, going to bed, and then he would wake me up because it was like he would be waking up at 4,
Mhm.
3:30, really early in the morning. So it's like I was always with him. I never had that like alone time unless it's
No.
like my husband got home from work and I like chilled in the bath for a half hour. Like it's that like newborn stage, but it goes on for years and years and years. It's so hard. For those listening who maybe don't have children on the spectrum or neurodivergent children, I was reading this article from Autism Parenting Summit, and it gave some things for people to know. And I liked this list of things that parents of autistic children would want others to know. And the first one was, don't tell me that my child will grow out of it, which I think in those beginning years you get a lot. And then people
Yeah.
start realizing when they hit like 5, 6, 7 that they're still not potty trained or still not talking, that like these things go on forever. Don't say that.
Don't say that.
Um,
Say that.
this one, just let me have a bad day, which I love. And
Just let me have a bad day. I haven't heard
yeah,
that one.
just let me have a bad day. But at the same time, I just shared
Hey,
a piece
Richie.
that I've shared before about like, at the same time, you sometimes have to reach in and help those parents, but sometimes you need to let just people be down and not
Trying to
like,
fix it. Yeah.
Well,
or
and
solve
again,
the
I
problem.
think people don't know what to say, but it comes across as very condescending, sort of in a way. And don't say you're sorry. Please don't say you're sorry.
Well, for me,
Please
when someone
don't say you're
says that to me, I just shut down. I
Yeah,
don't
don't say
want to
you're
talk
sorry.
about it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're saying, like, or trying to like,
Oh, and please don't tell me you don't know how I do it.
Well,
Because
it's
if
like
this
the
was
kind
you
of
and you're in this
sorry.
situation, you would do it for your child because you don't have a choice.
The kind of sorry. It's like
Or
you
don't.
could be sorry I'm having a bad day, or sorry that it's so tough, but don't say like sorry that your child, I don't know, has autism. I don't know. It's like,
And I know people don't say
like,
it to be in any sort of way. They say it, I think, because they don't know what else to say. Like, oh, or if you ever met someone at the random, like, they're like, oh, sorry. Like, if someone, like, oh, my daughter's autistic. Oh, I'm sorry. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can say
Like,
sorry
it's-
about like the situation, but don't
Yeah.
don't have that be your reaction to
Yeah.
it. Number 3 is this. I'm big on this. Please don't give me advice on discipline. If you have a child, unless it's asked for, always with advice, no matter what it is. If it's not asked for, people don't give it. But
Mhm.
kids with autism, which I've come to learn, we have to parent completely
Wicked
differently
different.
or very minutely. Like it's not the same. You might have to tell your child to do something 3 times. I have to tell my child that 100 million times
For
it
3
to
years.
process. Yeah. Like it's just so different. And I mean, talk to anyone who works with autistic children or anything like that. It's not the same. So like you might be trying to help, but unless someone's directly like, hey, I'm going through this. Have you gone through this? Don't give any advice.
Yeah.
Number 4, forgive me for talking about it so much, which that was me in the beginning. I wasn't
Yeah.
talking about autism. I was trying to figure out what was going on. I just kept talking about my kid.
I was in it with autism for numerous years. It was all consuming, I would
Blue
say.
hair.
All consuming for sure. I couldn't
Blue
think about
hair.
anything else. Blue hair, yes, when I had blue hair. I for sure like didn't realize how consumed with autism I was
Same.
for so long. Yeah.
And people still think that that's all I talk about.
Yeah.
The blog and this podcast, but people need to talk about their lives and their stuff. Number 5 was ask me questions, which
Yes.
I love. And when Jesse was younger, I think that was harder for me because I didn't know, and I still don't know a ton, but now asking me questions is better than like coming out with advice or making judgments. that I hear about behind my back.
Whoa, hey.
In case you're listening.
They're not, because this is all Jamie talks about.
Number 6 was I'm scared, which what I like about that is like that's the basis we're coming from. We're scared. I mean, it's like a simple way of putting it. It encompasses a lot of things in this life. And number 7 kind of goes with that. Like, I feel guilty, which we've had a whole episode about. And then not Tabs. Jen's favorite thing to say, autism has changed me.
Yeah.
It doesn't say fundamentally though, but we've talked
No
about that.
doubt about it.
And number 9, the last one is that I am proud of my child, which I thought would transition into what I wanted to talk about next was maybe some of the things that happen with autism, maybe behind closed doors, maybe not, that we don't talk a lot about that are positive. So I was just thinking about even when Tabs was talking about something with the lows and the highs and, you know, the opposition and all things are really hard. But I feel like when my son does accomplish something or we get a leap and he's able to do something he overcomes something, that it is the most rewarding thing ever. And not even, I won't even say all rewarding because I can't always like take credit for that or helping him all the time through that. Sometimes it just happens and it's something he's done himself. But I am so proud of my son on such a level. Like, of course, I'm also proud of my daughter for everything she does. But I think about, you know, I was just talking to someone about like eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. For my daughter, she just picked up a peanut butter and jelly sandwich one day and took a bite of it and tried it. For my son, it took like showing him the bread, him getting used to eating bread, and then not constantly deconstructing the whole sandwich and pulling it apart and making a mess everywhere with peanut butter and jelly. Like, we've had to work really hard. I mean, it took about, he's probably started eating peanut butter and jelly when he was like 3. I would say by 7 is when we got to that point that he would just take a bite of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like, such a simple thing. But, you know, and I didn't even notice because we'd been working on it for so many years. I just thought about it last year one time that we were sending sandwiches to school and he would come back and of course the crust would be there, which I feel is very typical, but he would have eaten the sandwich. And I was like, I didn't even like really realize the moment he started doing that, but that's amazing. It's such a simple thing, but I'm so proud that my son got there. I know that sounds really silly, but with our kids, that's kind of how it is. Like, on everything they learn and do is we have to really do on a minute level, but when they accomplish it, it feels amazing and you're so proud of them. So that was kind of my thing of like something you don't really see, and I think something we don't talk about a lot because people just don't understand that. Like, the day my son tied his shoes, I bawled. It was something I never thought would happen, and we weren't working on it. His therapist just decided to work on it. I bawled. Like, I was so proud of my son for getting to that point. Anyway, does anyone have anything else?
Our kids pare down our life in a way that's like really beautiful, and I write about that a lot, especially in the early years. I would write about like watching my kids experience the world in a way that other children don't, because they're so focused into things that are like beautiful in the world, you know, like leaves and rain and sand and like little droplets of things that other children wouldn't notice. And then it brings me to that place where I can like remove myself from all the other garbage that is in the world because I get to watch them experience life in that way. Also, our kids are so funny. Like, they are just like naturally hilarious. And every single day, Nixon makes me laugh, and Nora. Like, every single day. There's not, even on the hardest of days, there's some kind of laughter that's going on that you appreciate so much more. And I'm with you with the accomplishments. Like, there's so much hard work. When I learned that Nixon had a friend at school, I cried. I did. I cried because, like, you're told so many times about our kids being unable to connect with other people and all this stuff. That's not something that's understood, that our kids actually do connect to other people regularly, but in their own way and space, and, you know, want that. So I think the positives, there is a lot of positives, and we get to bypass some of the regular kid garbage. My son thinks the tooth fairy's creepy as hell. I didn't have to go through all of that rigmarole, like there's like just certain things
Yeah,
that
listen, she holds a sacred place in this house. Okay, so be careful.
No, my Nixon was like, I don't want to do that.
Don't go there.
Someone's gonna sneak into my bedroom, put money under my pillow for my tooth. That seems weird. But I think like we get to jump over some of the things that other parents have to do because it's part of the program, and our kids are like on the outskirts of
Mhm.
that normalcy or whatever, which I think is really great too. Like, no.
Many of us start Christmas songs in February though. So like there's a
Yeah.
wish wash to all these things.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
I wish I had more of a Christmas kid. Jesse's very scheduled with his holiday.
Nixon too. Yeah.
What about you, Kimmy?
So I find that like it's not that I mean I share everything, but I find as she's getting older that it's harder to convey these things, like how huge they are. So
Mhm.
if I'm like, oh my God, Alyssa did this, and someone's like, everyone's always like, oh wow, that's great. But like you can see in their face that they don't, because it's something
Get
that
it.
could be so basic. And her skills are just so inconsistent. Like she can be so skilled in one area that you're like, oh, how does she know that? Or how can she do that? But then in other areas, she doesn't have some basic, she's not able to do some very basic things that like most obviously people her age can do. I can give you guys an example. So Alyssa has been on this thing that she decided that she wants this purple jacket from Amazon.
I love
And
it.
I'm like,
I
well,
love this story.
so the thing is, the jacket was like 20 something dollars, but when I put her size in, it jumped up to 40. I know she's probably not going to wear the jacket. So I'm like, I put it in the cart. And then I was like, okay, well, it's fine. Like she'll probably forget about it because she does these things time to time and then she forgets about it. And then sometimes I'll get like, she wanted these Adidas pants. She was adamant on them. She's never worn them. They were $30 and she won't let me take them out of her room. So I can't even give them to somebody else. But she came up to me and she said purple, and I didn't understand what she was saying at first because her speech isn't real clear. And I was like, oh, purple. And she does this. She makes up her own signs, which I freaking love. I think it's hysterical. So she's doing the sign of zipping up a jacket. Like that's her sign for
Yeah.
jacket. I don't know what the
Yeah.
actual sign is, but that's Alyssa's sign. And I'm like, oh, purple jacket. So she's still talking about it. So I'm like, all right, mommy's gonna get it next week. And then I was telling my daughter about this at work. My other daughter walks by and she goes, is that why there's like 15 jackets in the Amazon cart? And I'm like, what? No, I didn't put 15 jackets in the Amazon cart. Well, there's many, many purple jackets, people in my $515 worth of
A
Amazon
purple jacket.
of jackets. Most of them are
Didn't
purple.
check out though.
There
No.
is one flannel.
There
is
was one flannel, and there's
Uh-huh.
one that almost looks like a bathrobe. So I think she also wants a bathrobe. But she's never
That's
been
awesome.
able to, known how to, or she's never added something to our Amazon cart before. Like that's like, and this is something that's obviously basic. So that's confusing for me to be like, wow, this is really great. That I mean, not too great. Thank God
It
she didn't
takes
put it
such
to the side because
planning.
that means she. So I gave her my phone. That means she has to find Amazon, get onto the Amazon, find a way to look up a jacket, and then scroll through and find the jacket, and then add it to the cart. Like that's a lot
Yeah.
of steps.
Yeah.
So I ordered the jacket, and I told her that it was coming, but with Alyssa, it's
Just
really
one of
hard
them,
to
like
know.
a real a-hole mom. You didn't order all 13 of them like she wanted.
No, I just
Such a
ordered one.
jerk.
Sorry.
I don't
We'll
know what
see
your
if she
problem
wears this.
is.
I'll get her more. So so we order it, and I tell her that we order it and all that. And the other day she takes my phone again. So I'm like, yep, it's coming. So today, and I told her it's coming on Monday. Yesterday it's coming tomorrow. But like I said, it's really hard to gauge exactly what she's understanding with stuff like this. Well, she could understand because let me tell you what she did today. She wanted my phone, which I gave to her. And Lexi is also waiting for a water cup to come, not from Amazon, from somewhere else. So she was also talking about her delivery coming. She showed me jacket and then she went to the door and looked outside. She knows it's coming today. Okay. So
Awesome.
Oh my God, I love her.
this has never really happened like to the degree of her like really just realizing it on her own. Well, she goes to the Amazon, she shows me the delivery, the part that shows you the delivery. It shows you, oh, it's shipped, it's out for delivery. Like, let me be clear. I have a trouble finding that thing sometimes. You gotta go to like the main page, and then
Orders.
they move where it is. You got to go to orders, then you got to pick what you ordered. I mean, that's a lot of navigating. And I'm like, holy, she's looking at the shipped part. Like, what is happening? And it really, I mean, that's so much understanding for her and motor planning at the same time. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable. but it's very hard to like explain how huge that is to somebody. Like
Yeah.
people just don't, they're like, oh, she added something to a cart. I mean, that doesn't sound that genius. You know what I mean? And then for her to like also be able to show me the shipping part, I was like, what the heck is happening?
It's
And they
amazing, but
tell
also
you,
could turn into a expensive habit
Yeah,
for
watch out.
Mhm.
when she
You
learns
better
that
put
swipe,
password on there.
she learns that swipe, I'm in big trouble. And it's just people tell you, therapists tell you, specialists tell you, doctors tell you that, you know, she's going to learn and then she's going to plateau and then she's going to stop learning and then her progression will stop. And thankfully, she's 27 years old. It's not stopping. Like she's still learning, she's still doing new things.
Exploding.
So it's huge. And
Yeah.
a lot of them are little things. Okay. This is a big thing for us because it's something new. But it's not. It is a little thing, but like all these little things just add up to tremendous growth. Like
Mhm.
we were at a
Yeah.
baby shower yesterday. I came up to me and she said something. I couldn't understand what she was saying. It sounded like something chew, and then it sounded like something two. And a lot of times, sometimes she'll ask for goodies. She'll say two, and she'll do two fingers. And I'm like, okay, you want two? Go ahead. Or like maybe something we're eating, which is like funny because she definitely understands that, but she doesn't really understand math or numbers, but she understands two. And I'm like, oh, maybe she wants two cookies. So I'm like, okay, go ahead. You can go get it. And I let her go get it. And then she came back with a juice box. And I'm like, oh, she said juice.
Juice.
But she doesn't come up to me and verbalize things. Like, that's not something she really does. I'm always like, oh, do you want this? And then she repeats it back, you know? Wow, that was, I mean, too bad. I really couldn't understand what she was saying. But when I saw her with the juice, I was like, oh, wow, that was pretty good, you know, obviously for her. But again, it's hard to explain this to other people
Mhm.
that don't really, really know her and really, really know what her baseline is because they don't, you know,
It's
it
mind
being
blowing sometimes. You get jarred by, you're like, what the heck? The other day, Nixon wanted to go somewhere, and I'm like, okay, go in your drawer, get your clothes, put them on. I say this to him all the time. And then I come back and we're still in the underwear. You know what I mean? Like, I just
Mhm.
keep saying it, hoping that one day that I'll show up and he'll be dressed. So I'm in the kitchen doing the dishes, whatever. Go into my bedroom. I look at him. He's completely dressed, head to toe.
That's awesome.
Clothes are on because he was motivated by wherever he wanted to go. And I'm like, oh, now I know that you can get yourself dressed.
Yeah.
I had that exact same experience. It was the day we were going to an amusement park. He got dressed so fast, and we were like,
What the hell?
yeah,
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. I know you can put your own clothes on, but you're like blown away by sometimes, like, because with autism, you don't get to see the steps a lot of times. Our kids don't know how to do something, and then they do. And you're like, where did you learn that?
I
Even
know it's
though you've been
crazy.
Well, and then
practicing.
you find these like little hints along the way. Like you can see in Pro Quo that she had hit jacket
And
so
she
that
did
she
do
could
that
see
the
how it
other
was
day,
spelled or whatever. You know, like you find
which is
these hints
also
along the
so
way, but it's
And they figure it out by themselves,
after.
which is the coolest part.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's
and you're like,
fantastic.
it takes me like sometimes I'm like, oh, that's how she figured that out. Like it's like you don't even
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people that have autism have an awkwardness. So like Alyssa definitely has this, so she doesn't like to do things in front of you if she's not sure
Yeah.
Hmm.
she's doing something right or if it's okay to do or whatever it is. So like I think that's also why sometimes things happen on the slide that you don't realize. And then, you know,
Yeah.
because she's God knows what she's doing on her iPad when I'm not looking. I mean, I could
Well, and I think all our kids like that positive feedback and that
Mhm.
affirmation, but I don't think like typical kids, I mean, at least in our experience with my daughter and my son, they're always searching. Like my daughter comes to us all the time. She's like, look what I did. She wants that. Jesse doesn't ever really do that. And if he does, it's like about the really obvious things like,
Mhm.
look, mom, I built this tower or something. I mean, which he would never gonna do that. Things like that. I think I told you guys before the story of the frozen blueberries. So my kids both love eating frozen blueberries. So over the summer, we'll usually buy a couple cartons. I'll throw one in the freezer and one in the fridge. And then when the ones in the freezer freeze, they'll just pop them open and eat them. And so I kept finding frozen blueberries in the freezer. And I'm like, oh, my husband usually does the grocery shopping. So I was like, oh, Isaac must be doing this. Like, I'm like, great. And one day I'm at the fridge with Jesse and he goes in, he opens the fridge. He's always the most independent around food. I don't know where he gets that from. And he took a clam of blueberries from the fridge and he popped them in the freezer and he closed the door. And then the next day I think the next day he went in and he made sure they were frozen and he opened them and ate them. Like that was like astounding to me. I had no clue he
Mhm.
like put that connection together that the biggest part to me is that he had the patience to wait for them to freeze.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I always underestimate with him, I think. I mean, because my hell, that kid does
Patience.
not have patience a lot of the time. But I was like, him doing it himself too helped him figure out, like, okay, I have to wait. Me telling him he had to wait, F off, lady.
Nothing.
Where's my, you should have had these already frozen. But he's doing it. And it was like the coolest thing. And I was just so excited in that moment.
Yeah, it's like fun. You know, you can see it in their face. Like when certain things that I say, I can see it in their face. They're like, "Oh, that's so great!" But like in their face, they're like, "What the?" You know, like they don't. It's like
Okay,
they're
Mom,
not like
that's
getting
so
it.
true.
Nixon loves
I already
praise.
asked you
Nora.
for a juice box, lady.
Yeah.
Like, I
Nora,
told you I'm
Nora,
getting this.
she does not want you celebrating her. She is like,
Oh, it's so
okay, move it
hard.
along, lady. I don't
That's how
need your
Jesse-
praise.
Jesse's with some things, but like baseball's a good example. If people don't cheer for him, he'll get so pissed. He's like, no one cheered me. Cheer me. And he also
Cheer.
sometimes flexes his muscles after he it's okay. And he bows. Does anyone else have any more?
I think I will say that because I watch Celie in this like hyper state of stuff all the time. She's just like revved so high. I'm along for the ride of the scary stuff. But because I know her in the way that I do, I can see when she's calm. I can see when she's content. I know when she needs a snuggle. I might not know every time that it was supposed to end before the bite happens or whatever. But because I am so attuned to her everything,
Rhythm,
I get
yeah.
the pleasure of being next to her for the most glorious moments. And like for the moments where she feels like sunshine rays, or she has the calm, or just when there's like this trust between us and this like steady eddy thing. It's the thing that refuels me for the fight of the heart, you know? But thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, definitely a little moment like that can definitely change the trajectory. But also so can like, and I think it's we talked about it, and I know we're wrapping, but it's I hate to use the word triggering, but things can be triggering. And I know people get odd about people throwing around the word PTSD, but I can probably say wholeheartedly with the freight truck train coming at me, there's probably not an autistic parent that doesn't have PTSD in some form of another. And aggression is a deep one. So I think that it's like, again, you're just always in this heightened state of waiting for, like somebody on the table said, that shoe to drop. You're always waiting for it to happen. And if something good happens, you're like, yay, but okay, when's it going to crash? There's never
Right,
this
or is it going
full
to happen
sort
again?
of, yeah,
You know?
yeah. But talk about it. Talk about it.
Yeah, celebrate everything.
Mhm.
And I think that is
Yeah.
the brightest spot of, you know, having a child who is different and learns differently and sees the world differently. It's you get all these little celebrations that you wouldn't notice. You don't notice what a typical kid. I don't notice when Lexi learned how to add something to the Amazon card. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's I wish she didn't learn that actually.
Yes,
She
her last
unlearned that, please?
$512 haul.
No, I mean, no, my other kids, I'm saying, can they unlearn that? But I think that is just, you know, it's what gets you through.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've really thought about that as a parent with young children yet. The cost of Amazon and the fact that they
Oh, you know, Kaya
bought
says,
some movies, but
add to cart. Napkin.
Next-
Oh, yeah.
Thankfully.
something we've talked about a lot is the sibling relationship, and not even the siblings, but like watching Amelie grow up with Jesse as her brother has been amazing. And that there's hard things that come with that, obviously. Kimmy talked about that a lot, but there's also like really beautiful things that like my daughter, as much as my son has changed me into the person I am today, and I feel like I am a much more compassionate person. I understand people better. I don't hate people nearly as much as I did before. Not that I was a horrible, judgy person, but you really get to see a different side of life, and it gives you compassion for everybody. But the fact that my daughter, that's her basis, that's what she's starting with, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And you know, their relationship outside of the home is really different. Like you see Amelie off doing her thing. She loves being social. She's around, and Jesse's usually off with me. They usually don't want to do the same things. They rarely are playing or interacting together in public, but behind closed doors in our home, like not all the time, but we do have like really fun, great moments where they're playing along together. Amelie's kind of bossing him around and they're playing house and he's doing what he's told, but it's like, that's how they play, and they're laughing, and they love to wrestle and giggle, and like it looks like a really typical sibling relationship in our home when other people aren't around. And I know I'm so grateful that they have each other.
Mhm.
I love seeing that.
I see that even with Nixon and Nora, my two autistic kids. Like Nixon, every time Nora learns a word or says something out loud or makes a verbal approximation, he is so proud of her and so excited. And it is the sweetest thing. And he keeps asking recently, especially because her like sounds are going up and language is going up. He's like, is she learning to talk? This is so great. Like, yeah. It's
That's
just
sweet.
like they have compassion for each other and an understanding of each other that is like our understanding of our kids is so deep in their rhythms. And I think the siblings get that too from each other. It really is beautiful to watch.
You know, and I will end with that, Tabs, like you just said. I think our children feel in a deeper way than most people feel, which is so contradictory to what people think.
When we had Margie on, she talked about when she feels joy, it's like 100-fold. Like she feels it to her core. And I see that in my son sometimes. Where like, even though he can't really show it, sometimes it's just like a little jump. But when he's really happy, it's like bam. And it's really cool to watch.
Yeah, they do. They feel everything so intensely.
The opposite is really sad. But
The good and the bad.
Thank you everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed the series. If you relate to any of this and you don't want to talk to people about this, I think Rach said in our first episode, share the series and let people know a little more about what happens behind the closed doors in your home and some of the things we go through and our kiddos go through. And yeah, we will be back next week with more. I don't know what that's gonna be.
Something's coming, people.
We're approaching the holiday season, so good luck with that, friend.
Actually, it's Canada's Thanksgiving today, although when this airs, it will not be, but happy Thanksgiving, Canada.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Come and gone. It's come and gone.
When our Thanksgiving approach, I'm sure we'll be talking more and more about food. And anyway, have a great day or night, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us at the table for this episode of the Table for Five No Reservations podcast. Big thank you to all of our supporters. If you'd like to become a supporter, please check out the description of this episode. There you can also find episode information. If you enjoy our podcast, we would appreciate if you could rate and review us wherever you listen. Join us next Monday for more, and while you wait, check out our content on Facebook and Instagram. If you'd like to contact us, you can at tablefor5podcast@gmail.com. We can't wait to sit with you again. See you next time. Bye.